I've never seen the bridge during the day. It doesn't exist on any map. I've checked, over and over again. Satellite view, street view, city plans. Nothing. And yet I've walked it dozens of times. Hundreds, maybe. Always at night. Always in dreams. The moment I step onto it, I know I'm not awake. But that's the terrifying part. I feel everything. The cold iron beneath my feet, the wind rushing from both sides, the sound of water far, far below. Too far. Much farther than any bridge should ever span. It always starts the same way. I'm standing at the beginning of the bridge, in my pajamas, barefoot, the city behind me flickering like a dying signal. The first step is always the hardest, but once I take it, the rest follow like breath. The bridge is long, too long. It stretches beyond the horizon, gently curving into the fog. The air over it is always wet, humming with something just beyond hearing, the kind of sound you feel more than hear, a frequency that brushes the inside of your skull like fingers. And I walk. I don't know why. I've never reached the end. Not until last night. Last night, something changed. I remember stepping onto the bridge and knowing immediately that it was different. The wind was still. The air was warmer. The city behind me didn't flicker. It was just gone. Nothing but water stretching back behind me, too smooth to be natural, like someone had polished the ocean. And the bridge beneath me felt softer somehow, not rubbery, organic, as if it was alive, breathing. I walked. This time, there were no repeating lights, no shifting fog. The usual signs that I was trapped in a dream loop were absent. The world held still, expectant. After a while, I noticed the posts lining the bridge had names carved into them. Not graffiti, not etched, carved, like someone had carefully burned each letter into the wood with intention. The first name I recognized. It was mine, just sitting there on the first post, like it always had been. But the next name? I knew it too. My old classmate, someone I hadn't thought about in years. And the next, my brother, then my dog. The names continued, some familiar, some strange, some that sent a chill down my spine, because I didn't know how I knew them, but I did, like memories borrowed from someone else's life, and every name had a small, curled arrow pointing ahead. I kept walking. Eventually, the bridge shifted, the rails widened, the air thickened, the fog ahead glowed, and I saw figures waiting in the mist. At first, I thought they were statues, still and quiet, silhouettes of people caught in mid-step. But as I got closer, they moved. They didn't approach me. They didn't speak. They simply stood on either side of the bridge, facing me, as I passed between them, smiling. Some nodded, some waved. One woman whispered, "You finally came back." I didn't recognize her, but something deep inside me did. Her eyes were full of grief and joy at once, like seeing a loved one return from war. The further I walked, the more people appeared, dozens, then hundreds, lining both sides of the bridge, stretching into the mist. They clapped softly. Some wept. Some held candles, though there was no wind to flicker the flames. One old man stepped forward and said, "You look different, but it's still you." I tried to speak, but no sound came out. He placed a hand on my shoulder and nodded. They said you might not remember. He stepped aside, and I walked on. Eventually, the bridge narrowed again, and the crowds thinned, until it was just me and the end. A tall, ornate archway of stone stood ahead, covered in ivy that shimmered like metal. Words etched across the top read, "To those who returned unbroken." I stepped through. The light changed instantly. No sun, no stars, but everything glowed with quiet purpose. The air tasted like warmth, like something I used to know as a child but could never name. And then I heard it, a voice, familiar, gentle. "We've been waiting for you." I turned, and a person stepped from the light, smiling, eyes full of recognition. But I had never seen them before, had I? They opened their arms and said, "Welcome home." And I realized I wasn't dreaming anymore, or maybe I had just crossed into the dream I'd never left. I stood there, unmoving, beneath the archway of stone and light, staring into the face of a stranger who knew me better than I knew myself. They didn't approach, they didn't push, they just waited, arms half open, head tilted, with a quiet patience that made me want to cry. Not out of fear, not even out of confusion, but because some part of me believed them, believed I was home. The ground beneath my feet was soft now, moss-covered, warm. The bridge was gone behind me. No footsteps to echo back, no railings to follow. Only silence, stretching in all directions, alive and gentle like a sleeping animal. The person in front of me, man, woman, I couldn't tell, smiled again and said, "We weren't sure you'd ever make it all the way across." My voice cracked as I asked, "Where am I?" They stepped to the side and motioned forward. "It's easier to show you." I walked. They followed. The path curved naturally, like a trail worn by memory rather than feet. Trees rose around me, silver trunks, soft purple leaves, glowing at the edges. The air shimmered faintly, as if full of dust motes made of light. It smelled like books and rain, and the warmth of someone waiting for you in another room. As we walked, I saw buildings in the distance, small ones at first, then larger, all unfamiliar in shape, rounded towers, wide halls built from curved stone and shimmering glass. But none of it felt alien. It all felt remembered, like walking through the background of a dream I'd had long ago and forgotten. People passed us. They nodded at me. Some smiled. Some laughed. One woman wiped away a tear and whispered something that sounded like my name, not the one I use now, a deeper one, a first one, a name from before. They knew me, every single one. I reached a small plaza where a fountain bubbled in reverse, water flowing upward into a floating orb that pulsed with light. Around it, people sat on benches, whispered in groups, touched their hands to the stone floor, and closed their eyes like they were listening to music only they could hear. My guide turned to me. "This is where those who return gather." "Return?" I asked. "From where?" They looked at me for a long time before saying, "From forgetting." The word hit something in my chest. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I had no idea what they meant, but I did, even if I didn't have the words for it. We walked into a building, tall, circular, the roof open to a sky that shimmered like water. Inside were hundreds of mirrors. None of them showed me, not one. Each reflected a person I'd been, or could have been. I approached one and saw myself as a child, holding a wooden sword and smiling so wide my cheeks hurt just seeing it. Another showed me older, seated on a rooftop beneath a red moon. Another, me, sleeping beneath the same tree I had just passed outside. Each mirror had a plaque, and each plaque had a date. None of them from this world, none of them from mine. I turned to my guide. "What is this place?" They gave me a look that felt like an embrace. "A world built from the parts of you that never stopped dreaming." I shook my head. "This isn't real. It can't be." "Is your other world more real?" they asked softly. I opened my mouth, closed it. My old world, the one with alarms, bills, office cubicles, blinking screens, was fading in my memory. Not gone, but blurred, like a story someone else told me too many times until I started believing it was mine. And this place? It wasn't asking me to believe. It simply was. That night, I sat beneath a tree whose roots glowed with soft orange light, and people gathered around me. Some told me their names. Some told me mine. One man held my hand and said, "I remembered you before I knew myself." A girl placed a flower on my shoulder and said, "You were the first to cross the bridge completely." A woman whispered, "You stayed awake through the forgetting." I didn't understand what I had done, but I knew in that moment I belonged. And as I looked at the stars overhead, each pulsing like a heartbeat, I felt something shift, not around me, inside, like I was waking up for the first time in years. But not waking into my bed, not waking into the city, not even waking into the dream. Something deeper, something real. And in the distance, faint but growing stronger, I heard the bridge, still humming behind me, still there, waiting for someone else to cross. I woke with a name on my lips, not the one I was given, not the one I answer to in the waking world. This one was older, soft and strange in my mouth, but electric down to the bone. It vanished the second I tried to say it aloud, like a thought slipping between mental fingers, but for a moment, it felt like everything. Around me, the world was already stirring. The city beyond the bridge didn't have alarms or traffic or a rising sun. It had its own rhythm, its own rules. The sky pulsed in warm color like breath, and buildings shifted slightly in the corner of your eye, adjusting as if to match how you remembered them. The people here didn't rush. They moved with purpose, but never urgency. And each time I looked at someone, they looked back, like we shared a secret neither of us could name. My guide from the bridge found me again near a field of glass-barked trees. They sat beside me without a word and handed me something flat and square, wrapped in soft cloth. When I unwrapped it, I found a map, but not one made of places or roads. It was a swirling web of names, dozens, hundreds, thousands, some written in spirals, some in branching lines, others floating free like pollen. Many I didn't recognize, but a few struck chords in me I didn't expect. A neighbor from childhood, a teacher I never thanked, a stranger I met once at a train station who gave me their umbrella in the rain. Each name pulsed faintly, and as I stared at them, I realized this was not a map of the city. It was a map into it, built from the people who had crossed the bridge. The guide finally spoke. Everyone leaves something behind. Everyone brings something with them. The city is made from both. I ran my finger along one of the spiraling lines and watched it shimmer. At its center, my name, or at least the one this place knew me by. Around it, names that spun outward like constellations. The guide smiled. Some you've met already. And the others? I asked. Waiting. Where? Everywhere. I folded the map carefully and asked the question I'd been holding back. What is this place really? The guide looked up at the sky as it dimmed slightly, shifting into cool violets and deep golds. It's what remains when the noise falls away. Is it heaven? No. A dream? Closer. A lie? The guide smiled. If so, it's one you made for yourself. That sat with me for a long time. We walked together through a market built entirely from memory. Stalls made of sun-bleached driftwood sold music in bottles, laughter in sealed jars, colors that changed based on how you felt. A woman handed me a box that hummed, and when I opened it, it played my mother's voice, reading a bedtime story I hadn't heard since I was 6. I nearly dropped it. No one asked for payment here, only remembrance. A man stopped me and placed his hand on my shoulder. He didn't speak, just stared into my eyes like searching for something buried deep. When I asked who he was, he said, "The one you almost became," and walked on. The deeper I wandered, the more the city opened to me. Paths unfurled from thought. Doors appeared when I needed them. But never the same way twice. And always, always, there were names, etched into walls, carved into stone, whispered in the wind. Even the trees grew them in knots and veins across their bark. Every name held a story, and every story was part of this place, including mine. That night, I unfolded the map again and followed one of the names I couldn't stop looking at, one I didn't recognize, but that stirred something in my chest, like hunger. It led me to the edge of a cliff I hadn't seen before. Below, the city shimmered like a living starfield, glowing with memories. I stood there for a long time before someone joined me. She was tall, graceful, older than me by decades. Her face wasn't familiar, but her eyes were. They looked like home. "Do you remember me?" she asked. I opened my mouth, closed it. "I'm not sure." She nodded. "That's okay, you will." And she handed me a name, not written, spoken, directly into my mind. When I heard it, I dropped to my knees. Not because it hurt, because it filled me, like the final piece of a puzzle snapping into place. I looked at her, wide-eyed. "You're—" "Yes," she said. "You were gone. I crossed before you." "You died," I whispered. She smiled. "Number I returned." She faded into the air like mist, and the name remained, burning softly behind my eyes. I stood on that cliff, clutching the map, heart thudding, with something deeper than fear. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Belonging. The first time I turned around to see if the bridge was still there, it wasn't. No wood, no stone, no railings, just sky, wide and glowing and empty. I should have panicked. I should have felt trapped, but I didn't. The absence didn't feel cruel. It felt inevitable, like a chapter ending, like turning a page you can't flip back. The city didn't care that the bridge was gone. No one rushed to find it. No one questioned what that meant. Because for them, it always disappeared. Only those who crossed remembered crossing. And once you did, you stayed. Still, some part of me resisted. I wandered the edge where the bridge had once stood. The cliffside there was smooth, shaped by the wind, but I swear I could feel faint ridges in the air, like echoes of the steps I'd taken. My feet tingled as if the wood had never stopped vibrating beneath them. I looked out at the horizon, where once there was fog, and now only soft gold light shimmered over a sea of clouds. And then I saw her again, the woman from the night before, the one who gave me my missing name. She stood at the cliff's edge, her back to me, arms folded in front of her, watching the horizon. "You tried to go back," she said before I could speak. "I just wanted to see." She turned. "There's nothing to see. Not anymore." "Then where is the bridge?" She gave me a long, gentle look. "The bridge only appears when someone needs to leave, and you don't need to anymore." "That's not your decision." "No," she agreed, "it's yours. But the bridge listens to truth, not want." I didn't understand then, not completely, but the words stayed in my bones. The days blurred after that, or maybe it was still night. Time in the city didn't move like it did back home, wherever home was now. Clocks existed, but only as relics, museum pieces powered by memory rather than gears. The sky changed color when you felt different. Music came not from speakers, but from the buildings themselves, humming with your mood. And yet, I started to notice something else. Familiar faces. Too familiar. not people I remembered from childhood or life. People who looked like me. One was younger, maybe 15, wandering afield, talking to himself. One older, 40 maybe, working in a garden with hands full of dirt and peace. One sat silently, by a river, staring into his reflection, like waiting for it to answer. And one passed me on a stairwell and whispered, "Don't forget again." I spun. He was gone. I ran to the guide, the one who had greeted me that first night, asked about them. They looked at me with more sorrow than surprise. "You're remembering too quickly." "Who are they?" I asked. "The lives you almost lived, the choices you abandoned, the versions of you that never made it across. Why are they here?" "Because you brought them." I felt cold despite the light. "They follow me. They are you. And now that you've returned, they have nowhere else to go." That night, I dreamed of the bridge, but it wasn't whole. It was fractured, suspended in a void, each plank held by threads of memory, each rail humming with the sound of questions I never answered. And beyond the bridge, I saw the city I came from, not as it was, but as it remembered itself. Flickering screens, empty rooms, people scrolling through meaningless feeds, 1,000 voices, talking but never listening, and standing in the middle of it all, me, alone, unaware, still sleeping, still waiting. I woke up, in tears, because I wasn't sure if I had left that person behind, or if that version of me had never existed in the first place. The next day, I returned to the cliff again, and this time, something was different. A line of light, thin and trembling, stretched across the sky. It wasn't the bridge, not yet, but it was something. I reached out to touch it, and the sky rippled. A whisper brushed my skin like wind. "You can visit, but not stay." I looked down and saw the map in my hand again, pulsing faintly. My name had moved, no longer in the center, no longer surrounded by others. It stood alone, tethered by a single, flickering thread, leading back to the other side, to the world I came from, and I understood. The bridge was reforming, not because I wanted it, but because someone else needed to cross now, and I was the only one who could guide them. The thread of light stretched thin across the sky, swaying ever so slightly, like it could snap at any moment. I stood on the edge of the world, the edge of this world, and watched as it pulsed softly, with every breath I took, tethering me to something I wasn't sure I wanted to return to. But this wasn't about me anymore, not entirely. I wasn't the only one watching the thread. Across the clearing stood a boy, barefoot, shivering, no older than 10. He didn't look at me. His eyes were fixed on the sky, wide and afraid. His lips moved as if he were whispering to something far away, something only he could hear. I stepped toward him. The ground held my weight, like it remembered me. He turned when I reached him. His eyes were too old for his face. "You heard it too," he said. I nodded. "I followed the light," he whispered. "I thought it would take me somewhere safe." "You found it?" He shook his head. "Not yet. I'm still in between." I looked back at the thread. It was stronger now, glowing steadier, as if aware we were both watching, like it had been waiting for this moment as long as we had. He reached for my hand, without asking, and I took it, without hesitation. The bridge formed beneath our feet, not all at once, but plank by plank, stretching outward from the cliff, like it was building itself from memory. Each step revealed another. The structure groaned softly, not in warning, but in remembrance. We walked, side by side. Silence held between us, not heavy, but sacred. Each step took effort, not physical, but emotional. With every footfall, I felt pieces of myself falling away, not lost, just set down. Doubt, guilt, that persistent ache in my chest I carried for years without knowing its name. The boy looked up at me. "You don't belong there anymore." "I know," I said, "but I do." "Yes," I said again. We reached the middle of the bridge. Below us, clouds churned like oceans. Above us, the sky cracked just slightly, and through it I saw flickers of the waking world. Streetlights, empty chairs, a schoolyard, a hand reaching for a switch. The boy stopped. "I'm scared." I knelt beside him. "That's okay." "What if they don't remember me?" "They will. If not right away, then someday." "What if I forget this place?" I smiled. "You won't." He held tighter to my fingers, and then he let go. Walked forward alone. One step, then another. The light swallowed him gently. No sound, no burst, just acceptance. I stood alone again, and the bridge behind me trembled. I turned to walk back, but the city had changed, not in shape, but in feeling. It had moved somehow, shifting closer to me, like I wasn't returning to it, but being drawn deeper into it. The path reformed, not from planks this time, but from names. Every name I had ever forgotten, every version of me. They paved the way beneath my feet, and when I crossed the final step, they were waiting, my guide, the woman who remembered me, the people who whispered my name. They didn't speak, they didn't have to, because I remembered now. Everything. Not just who I was, but who I always had been. One of many, a keeper of the crossing, a shepherd of the forgotten. The bridge was never just for escape. It was a passage, for those ready, for those lost, for those who had nothing left in the waking world except the memory of a light that didn't fit their sky. And I, like many before me, had crossed not to flee, but to prepare the way for someone else. That night, the stars blinked slower. The city sang softer. The sky curved inward like a closing eye. And I slept beneath a tree whose leaves shimmered with every name I had ever loved. In my dream, I stood once more at the start of the bridge, alone, waiting, and someone far away stepped into the fog.